Hello, welcome to the ALE conference paper presentation on the Prometheus Leadership Commons. My name is Tom Bohens. I'm the founder of something called the Prometheus Project and the lead author of the conference paper. Let me tell you a little bit about the origin story of where we are today. There's 3 points of experience that I think set up the introduction to this Prometheus Project and the Leadership Framework. One is a conversation that I had with an executive client, a CEO who had just launched his veterinary products company. And in a debrief we had, I asked what was one thing that would be helpful to him in his leadership development. Being an engineer and an entrepreneur, he asked, I'd like a digestible schematic that keeps me focused on the whole of what leadership is. Second experience I had is really just the general experience in the leadership ecosphere. There's an overwhelming amount of ideas and comments, publications, posts. There's just so much to sort through that it's difficult for us to do this as practitioners, as experts, as people who are focused full time. So it's impossible for our constituents, the people that we are supposed to be serving. We have to, as an industry, as a profession, come together to provide something cohesive and digestible and still useful and generalizable for our constituency. Third part of my origin story is really 2 things that happened at the same time. One was the choice I made to reread Robert Fritz's book on system structures. And the second was to accept an invitation to the Conscious Capitalism Conference in Barcelona in July of 2018. One of the things that struck me at the conference was the extraordinary talent and wisdom and intelligence and energy and passion that goes into building our leaders and our organizations and our whole world. And yet the result isn't yet what we'd expect. So would more effort create the result finally, or is there something that we can do so that the flow would be easier and more natural and the results would be more readily attained? This idea of opening the flow of leadership and leadership development further tied directly into Fritz's idea that structure determines flow, and that if we want to change the flow direction or the flow pace or efficiency or effectiveness, we have to think about what the structure is that's causing the flow currently and what might be changed in the structure. So it occurred to me that the essential question was, what was it about the structure of the leadership industry that could change, that would open the flow of leadership and leadership development? That existential question about opening the flow of leadership and leadership development and what the underlying structural opportunities might be stuck with me after the conference, and ultimately it gave birth to the idea of what we've now called the Prometheus Project. So the Prometheus Leadership Commons is more than just a infographic, even though we have nice infographics to try to communicate it. It is actually the distilled output of quite a bit of formal effort by a core group of researchers, but also an expanded group of researchers who use their experience base as well as published and unpublished works to put together this synthesis, this meta-structure around leadership that is digestible, helpful, but still covers all of the complex corners of leadership and is structured specifically with the idea of supporting my individual self-development, self-determined development, but also the programs and research that the rest of the community and participants and contributors use.
I'm Jonathan Reams. I'm an associate professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim, Norway. Tom brought me into the idea of the Prometheus Project, and I found it quite inspiring and engaging to take on. One of our first challenges was really to figure out what was the nature of the task in front of us, at least in the initial stages. One of the things that we had to consider was that leadership studies itself is a multidisciplinary and even transdisciplinary study. Our approach needed to really be transdisciplinary, and not only in different domains in terms of practice, user experience, all of these kind of things. We also realized that theory is the main body that we were working with, especially in this phase of the project. And so we were taking a meta-theoretical approach using theory as data. And what emerged from this process was really a framework that we could use to organize and orient a person with the idea that they could navigate their way through the aspects and domains of what is relevant to leadership and figure out both where they're at and where they need to go.
My name is Richard Clayton. I teach leadership from the Quarry Business School's Global MBA. And what I found from teaching this leadership course is the stuff I do on the messiness of leadership, the ambiguity of leadership, the dark side of leadership, sort of the shadow elements of what makes leadership life, are the things that the students are most interested in. And that's what attracted me to the Prometheus Framework, the idea that we actually had to have positive and negative interpretations of leadership and negotiate and navigate our way through them. So that's why I became involved. And I think the community that accepts that is the community that's going to help leadership move into a state that is future ready.
Jonathan and I will give you a brief overview of the Prometheus Leadership Commons, the shared framework to navigate leading and leader development. The framework is designed with two major groups: developing inner capacities and mastering adaptive skills. So one is geared around the effective development side, the other is geared around the cognitive and skills development side. Developing inner capacities is made of three major domains: the capacity to be, know, and love, and the adaptive skills, three domains, which we call the XYZ domains, about engaging people, challenges, and the process of leading. When you're looking at the framework at this level, A, B, C, and XYZ, we call this level 1, which is really the highest meta domains of what makes up the categories of leadership from A to Z. But there are two other levels, level 2 and level 3, that we define in the leadership framework. So here you can see the infographic that shows you level 1 with level 2 interleaved in each of the level 1 domains. So you see 6 meta domains at level 1 and a total of 29 subdomains within level 2. Each of those level 2 domains will break out into really an untold number of topics and subjects, but we have identified some of them. For example, under exploring, we see that as a combination of your instinct, your intuition, your semiotics, and your somatics, which means your symbolic reasoning and thinking and accessing things symbolically, and also the physical experience, the messaging, and the information you get from physical awareness.
Let's go into two examples of how these level 1 domains play out at level 2 and some illustrations at level 3. So to start, the capacity to be, which is an essential quality for leadership. And the 5 categories that we created for level 2 are self-identity, self-experience, self-profession, physical self, and collective self. And you can see how those are illustrated with a number of things, like how does instinct and emotion play into self-experience? How do values and purpose work on our self-profession? To the right, we see that we have to engage people as a skill. So this is applying our capacity to be to the relational element. And the 5 different categories we created at level 2 here are one-on-one, groups, complex, humans, and collective. So we see that we have to have people at the dyadic level, team level, global cross-boundary scales. We need to understand diversity and difference, and we need to understand collective leadership in terms of co-learning and being co-influencers. To dive more into this, have a look at the conference paper and come to our workshop.
I hope that simple introduction to the Prometheus Leadership Commons framework was helpful and interesting, and we certainly invite you to read the conference paper and join the workshop sponsored by ALE later this month. We hope that you like what you find in the framework. Our observation is that it's disarmingly simple, but its simplicity really is its strength, because the simplicity opens up our own thinking, but more importantly, our collaboration and learning across different stakeholders and different disciplines. I think it's also important to mention at this point that the Prometheus Project is not a consultancy. It's not a products company. We have no tip of the iceberg certification program for you to join. We're really an association of stakeholders, researchers, educators, practitioners, sponsors, all of whom are committed to opening the resources for leadership and opening the transformation of leadership in individuals, in organizations, and in society as a whole. And making these structural changes is not a simple thing. It's not just a 1 week or 1 year program. There's more to it than that. And so we put a sustaining organization together around that larger objective.
What we want to do next is introduce some of the people who started to populate the community and allow them to say a little bit about who they are and why they're here.
Hi, I'm Mikael Göte. I work at CRISP, Stockholm, Sweden. CRISP works with creating agile organizations that are sustainable. Leadership is an integral part of those agile transformations. And the more complex and dynamic the world is getting, the more important is leadership. And for that, the Prometheus Framework has been super useful. First of all, I think it has helped me to become more clear regarding my thinking about leadership. Secondly, it has helped me to design better workshops, to be more clear in my teaching. And thirdly, it has helped me in my own development.
I'm Deb Helsing, and I have two roles. I'm faculty at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I'm also co-director of Minds at Work. And the particular lens that I bring to leadership is from adult development, basically looking at the question of what are the demands that leaders face as the world grows ever more complex. What do they need psychologically in order to be able to meet those demands? And how do we prepare more and more leaders to be able to think and act and understand at greater levels of complexity? The reason why the Prometheus Project is so interesting to me is because these conversations have been very atomized, that we don't often come from different disciplines to the same place to think about the implications for leadership with a framework that can help us unite those conversations within one area, so that we're not talking past each other, but we're seeing how these different perspectives can complement each other and enhance each other. And that's why I'm here.
Hi, my name is Sebastian Reiche, and I'm a leadership professor and head of the People Management Department at IESE Business School in Barcelona, Spain. In my role at IESE, I'm involved in a wide range of executive education leadership development programs. So I think the Prometheus Project and the Prometheus Leadership Commons framework are very valuable, not only to help gain clarity what are relevant leadership competencies, but also helping to meet the unmet, unserved leadership development needs that there are.
So if listening to these people, you could recognize yourself here in terms of how you relate to leadership and how you resonate with the purpose and framework that we've been describing here and in our paper, then you might want to also come to our workshop. Within the ALE conference framework, at the end of July, we're going to host a 90-minute Zoom call to be able to have a very interactive and participatory session. And we really look forward to you joining us in this conversation.